Yeah, hi everyone. So today we are going to discuss an introduction about a static block. So what exactly a static keyword is? Why are we using this static keyword in Java? Okay, let us know that particular thing in detailed examples on this particular one. Static concept in Java. And that too, why are we using this static concept in Java also? We are going to study as part of our today's session. So the point here is static means a stable and a non-static means a non-stable. And moreover, this static is a keyword in Java which is used to manage memory efficiently. In order to manage your memory efficiently, we can use this particular static keywords. Okay, cool. We can apply this static keyword for variables, methods, blocks, and as well as a classes as well. That's fine. The static keywords belongs to a class, then an instance of a class. We will see this particular one. There are several differences between a static and an non-static. That's fine. We will see that. Static members belongs to a class instead of to a specific instance. Let me add a pointer here. Static members belongs to the class instead of a specific instance. This means if you can make a static code, you can access it without creating any object. Okay, without creating any object, you can access that particular information. Okay, good, done the deal. So let me show you a simple example. How can I access that information without creating any object? So what I'm doing right now means, as per our project, I'm creating a new Java class here. New Java class, example 13. I'm creating a two different methods here. Public void login, login, public void logout. So the only thing I am adding here is static keyword. If we add this static keyword, automatically this method will be a static method itself. So this example 13 is a class which has a static and as well as a non-static methods. Okay, example 13 is the class which has a non-static method and a static method. The only difference between a non-static and a static is for the non-static methods, we don't have this keyword. For the static methods, we do have these keywords. That's it. Nothing more than that. And now, let us create a new class and let us try to access this information in a new class. So, example 14 is a class which has a main method, and that too this main method is a static. That's fine. So here, let me try to create an object 13 obj.login, and whenever you observe this logout method on top of this green symbol, an S is highlighting which is a static. That's fine. Let me call it static. But as per the documentation, whatever I have created, we no need to use any object in order to access the static information. But I have created an object. See, your Java is throwing a warning message for us stating that this is a warning message. Whenever I mouse over on that warning message, it's saying that the static method logout from the type example 13 should be accessed in a static way. Change the access or remove the static or some of the solutions your Eclipse is populating. So, in order to access the information static one, the only thing I can use is class name dot desired method name is the syntax which we are going to use to call the static methods present in another class. So here, example 13, whenever I pressed a dot, see here the logout method is populating. So the bottom line out over here is, let me add a point. If we are accessing static stuff in multiple classes, then we can use class name dot a method name, which is a static method name. For suppose if we are accessing static stuff within the same class, then you no need to use class name dot a method name. Directly we can call method name itself. Fine. So far, whatever the examples we have studied, we checked in two classes. One class has a methods and the second class has a main method where we are calling the info. Now, let us create everything in one class and see how it's going to work. So, let me create a new Java class, example 15, with a main methods. That's fine. See here, guys, if you observe the scope basically, if you observe this scope, line number 3 is starting for a class and line number 10 is the ending for that class. Okay, line number 3 is the starting and line number 10 is the ending. This is the main method which is starting in line number 5 and ending at a line number 8. Okay, 5 and as well as the 8. This is the syntaxes for that. Now, what I need to do is this is inside a class which is starting in line number 5 and 10. In parallel to this, I can create my own methods here. See here, public static void login. My login method is a static login. Even logout is a static. I have created two different methods, a login and a logout. Both are of a static within the same class itself. Now here, I'm using this. Inside the static, we are calling login, logout. Both the static information I have called within the same class itself. So I was able to access it without using a class name also. Okay, without using a class name also. So when I run my script, the logic present in a login and a logout will be executed. Okay, it's getting executed. Immediately, a quick question will rise in our mind that, okay, a quick question will rise in our mind that main method is static and you are calling static blocks inside that. If we are calling a static inside a non-static block, then you have to create an object for that. Without creating an object, you can't access the static inside a non-static or non-static inside a static. These we can treat it as some kind of a thumb rules that you people need to remember inside this static. Okay, whenever you are working on this particular static, it's mandatory for us to remember these basic static rules. Okay, cool. Done the deal. And moreover, this static can be used for the various methods and as well as the variables. So here I have seen this one, right? So basically, within a class, assume that there is a one more method which is a non-static method. See here, this is not a static, but this is a create method. Create a method. So let me try to call the create a method here. So these two are a static. Login is a static, logout is a static, whereas a create is a non-static method. Though within a same class, we can't access the info. How you need to do? Mouse over on this create and see here, cannot access the state reference, change it to a static. So if you want to use inside this one, the first solution which it is prompting is change it to a static or create an object to this class and use with the help of this object. See here, obj dot create. I can call it. Either of these ways we can do. Either we can convert it into a static block or we can call it like this by creating an object. If you can look at this documentation basically, so we can call static methods directly while we cannot call non-static methods directly. You need to create an object of a class calling the non-static methods. Though it is in a same class or in a different class, you have to create an object in order to access the non-static information inside this static. Okay, cool. So the non-static stuff like methods and variables cannot be accessed inside the static methods. We can access only the static blocks inside the static methods. Okay, cool. And moreover, there is no such restriction for the non-static. Okay, we can access the static and as well as the non-static blocks inside the non-static information. Okay, cool. And the static method is associated with a class. That's the reason you are not accessing with the help of an object. Whereas the non-static stuff will be associated with object itself. Good enough. Done the deal. And then the next point here is what are all the various advantages with respect to this static? So it will save your program memory. In a simple terms, we can say that the static block will save our program memory. So here, assume that there are 500 students in a college. Now, All the data members will get an allocated memory each and every time. With this, the object is created. So whenever the 500 students object got created, 500 memory allocations will be allocated. The only thing we have is all the students will have a unique roll number and a name. So instance a data member is a good in such cases. Okay, so here we are going to define all the common properties and we will make it as a static so that everyone can be using this particular static without creating an object itself. We are managing the memory. Okay, without creating an object itself, we are managing the memory. So the ultimate point with respect to static is if I define something as a static, so I can save the memory basically. Okay, cool. So here, if I can apply any keyword, static keyword to a method, we can call it as a static methods. Okay, good. And there is a variables concept also with respect to this static. So what exactly the variables are? So we have already studied about a variables in the earlier sessions. Now we have a different types of a variables. Within these different types of a variables, we have a local variable, a non-static variable, and as well as a static variable. So basically, so these variables are an instance of variables. These are the class of variables specifically declared on a class level. The only difference between the variables, a normal variables and a static variables is just a static keywords. These static variables are used in a rare cases like when it is predefined that the value of the variable will never change. In that case, we will use these static variables. So when are we going to use this static? Whenever the value is not going to change. In such situations, we are going to use this static variables. Gets. So the class variables are created and executed as part of a program in the starting of a program and at the end of a program itself. It's nowhere related to an object. It's everything related to a class itself. Okay, good. So these class variables are okay. These class variables are visible for all the methods and constructors present in the class. These class variables are visible to other class based on its access modifiers. Generally, they are public itself. So how to define a class variable? See the simple thing or a static variable within the class. I'm specifying public static int a equal to 10. That's it. I have defined a variable with a static keyword. This variable can be accessed within this particular class or on other classes also. But the only thing which you need to consider is the value cannot be changed. Okay, cool. This is the static variables. And as well as the non-static variables means for any variables, if you are not creating this static block, we can treat it as a non-static block. If there is a no static block, then we can treat it as a non-static block. If there is a static block, we can access it inside a static block itself. That's it. Let us see this non-static variables. This example, we can treat it as a static variables, and this concept we can treat it as a non-static variables. Okay, so let us see the theory concept related to the non-static variables. These are non-static variables, we can also call it as an instance variables. These are defined on a class level itself, what we have defined right now. Instance variables are generally used with an object. So with the help of an object itself, you can access these instance variables. Without creating any object, you can't access these instance variables. Whereas the static variables, we can access them without creating any object. That's the difference between these two. Static can be accessed without creating an object, whereas a non-static variables can be accessed without creating any variables or without creating any objects. Okay, cool. And then as they are with respect to the object, these variables will be called and destroyed. We can call it as a created and as well as a destroyed with the object creation itself. Okay, and one more thing is these variables are accessed directly by all the non-static members and constructor of that class itself. You can access that information in all the non-static stuff. Okay, as this is a non-static one, you can access this info within the non-static manner itself. Okay, if you want to access inside a static, then definitely you have to create an object. Like how we have created an object in order to access the static methods, the same way you have to create an object in order to access these static variables also. The logic would be one and the same for the variables and as well as the methods. So you have to create an object. In order to access that information, you have to create an object. Cool. Done the deal. Done up to here. This is all about, okay, this is all about the various types of variables. And there is a one more type of a variable we have, which is a local variable. These variables are created inside a method, and moreover, we can't access those variables outside the method also. Let me show you an example for that. See here, we have a login methods, right? Inside the login, int or boolean status equal to false. For suppose I have a defined this boolean status equal to false. Whenever I have a defined this boolean status equal to false, let me try to access this status outside of this one, outside the method. System.out.println boolean status defined inside the login method. What is this? This is a status. It is throwing an error message stating that I didn't recognize the variable where you have created it. Go and verify it. So the point here is, okay, so the point here is, okay, so we are defining the variables. If we are defining the variables within a class, we can call them as a local variables, and we can't access those variables outside of that method. Their scope will be within that particular method itself. You can't access those variables outside that particular class. Those variables we can treat it as a local variables. So these here we have three different types of variables which we have studied. One is a local variables, and non-static variables, and as well as the static variables. Whatever the logics we have applied for static methods and as well as the non-static methods, it's going to be one and the same for these static variables and as well as the non-static variables as well. Gets done the deal. This is all about a static overview, guys. Is this point clear for you all, or do you have any questions for me till now? Guys, am I clear for you till now, or any questions for me on this static block?
Surinder, I have a doubt.
Okay.
Actually, for this one, right, in the real time, when can we decide we can create static or non-static method or variable, those things?
Yeah. The simple thing is basically this stuff whenever we are dealing inside frameworks. Okay,
Okay.
whenever you are working inside a framework. And moreover, if you defined a particular variable within a one class, or if you define a method within a one class, and assume that you want to access that information in a multiple classes. In such scenario, instead of creating an object for that, if you have defined this as a static and the place where you want to access as a static, then directly you no need to create an object. Directly you can use this static stuff out over there. So the thumb rule is whenever you are working on your projects, in such scenarios, depending on a method or the class wherever you are calling, you will tag these static blocks.
Okay.
Okay, cool. Done the deal. So, any further questions, Ara?
Yeah, I'm good.
Cool.
Also, if the what is that? If the non-static variable and static variables, right?
Yes.
In the same class, we can use anywhere. We don't need
Yes.
to create inside the method.
Yes, you no need to create inside the method. If you are defining at a class level, then it's going to be applicable for the entire class. The
Oh,
only way how we are calling would be differ. That's it.
oh, okay.
Okay, cool. Done the
Thank
deal. This is the thing, guys. Okay, cool. Okay, cool. Done the deal. So this is a simple point how exactly we need to work on a static block. And let us see the next concept. But for that, let us